I've spent the last 17 years surrounded by these buildings. They were designed by this guy, Eliel Saarinen. Some people pronounce it Eliel, some people pronounce it Eliel. I think it's largely irrelevant.
I think the most mind-boggling component of his work is the masonry.
Every single one of the facades in these buildings is a masterwork of brickwork or masonry. One of the really strange things that Saarinen seems to do over and over again is embed architectural fragments into the facades of his building in seemingly random places. This is fairly typical right here. So when you're surrounded by this kind of stuff every single day, it really has an impact on you. It works its way into your psyche. So when designing both an identity system and signage for Shadowbrook, I wanted to draw on this eclectic historicism, but in a more rustic northern Michigan kind of way. So with this as background, I set about designing, doing the computer work, the engineering, and the CAD work on a whole set of cartouches, architectural fragments in a way, for Shadowbrook. Here we see the machining of one of them, and then the subsequent painting. One of the deceptive and amazing things about painting a three-dimensional object is how the form, the actual three-dimensional form itself, influences the painting. You can see that on this section I'm using a pretty expensive gold paint to simulate gold leaf here. The black underpainting, given that it is on a fully three-dimensional form, really affects the way that this the gold is transferred to the object. You can see that I'm basically just scumbling or kissing the top surfaces of this object with gold paint. It really lends a very historical or aged vibe to the work without even trying. And the work takes on a much more three-dimensional kind of form when the underpainting is so dark. Here the first cartouche is tacked in place on the side door. You may notice the two wood screws. To the right and to the left of this object, you can see two wood screws. This cartouche will be hung on a French cleat, which will obviate the need for those wood screws. This is an in-process video. Similar to the facades and masonry work of Saarinen that we discussed earlier, my goal at Shadowbrook was to embed the facades with, for lack of a better word, architectural fragments that I design and create that are from different time periods, but feel harmonious with this rustic 1920s classic northern Michigan cottage. Here we can see the computer work and the machining of one of the signs. The computer work itself, the way that the computer work is represented feels exponentially more cartoony than the finished object, which I think you'll see in a moment. This is a view of one of the objects hung above an interior window in the kitchen. Each of the objects was machined from a different type of wood, but they were all finished with very traditional varnish. The natural varnish is one of the oldest and most traditional ways of finishing fine woodwork, and it lends a transparent amber quality to the pieces, which will age really, really beautifully. When sourcing wood for this project, I went to Rockler Lumber and found a really beautiful remnant, not having any idea what kind of wood it was at all. I think I paid $25 for it. After machining it, you can see here this exquisite color. This wood was extremely dense and probably the most beautiful wood I've ever worked with. After doing a bit of research, I was disappointed to find out that this is called Brazil wood, which is not illegal to purchase yet, but my research indicates that it will probably become illegal to purchase very soon, given that it's endangered. I have to say that this is an exquisite wood. One of the major elements that I built the identity system around is the image of a baby riding a seahorse that we can see here. Obviously, seahorses don't have arms. This is a much more fantastical take on that type of imagery. You may also notice, if you're familiar with my work, that the baby's head is a recurrent image from my body of work over the course of the past 5 years. Each year I make a new street sign for Shadowbrook. This is this year's in process. And here we see a random selection of a number of the different signs. This is the 2016 version of the sign, propped up on some wooden sawhorses in a garage. Obviously, it's not complete.
It was a rather quick episode this week. No time for mail time. We'll get back to a regular schedule pretty soon. Until next time.